back to 1996 just to see how he performed then. He scored and garnered 4,428,119. That put his percentage to 74.2%. In 2001, after 5 years, he garnered 5,128,360 votes. That brought his percentage to 69.33%. In 2006, again after 5 years, 4,109,449, giving him a percentage of 59.26. In 2011, this is how Yoweri Kaguta Museveni performed. He got 5,428,369 votes. That brought his percentage to 68.3. In 2016, he garnered 5,971,872, bringing his percentage to 60.62. And finally, in 2021, the results that we just got hours ago, he has garnered 5,851,037 votes. Once again, I repeat that Yoweri Museveni becomes the president-elect of Uganda with 5,851,037 votes, bringing his percentage to 58.64%. Well, there you have it from the Electoral Commission. Over the years, we've received these percentages, and there it is. Moving on, security forces have surrounded NUP leader Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu's home in Magere, Wakiso district, barring any entry or exit. Some party members who went to see Kyagulanyi, among them is Mityana Woman Member of Parliament-elect and Mityana Municipality Member of Parliament-elect Francis Zake, were refused to see Kyagulanyi. Zake was arrested and taken to Kasangati police station, where party members allege he was tortured. He was later released and taken to Lubaga Hospital by the party spokesperson Joel Senyonyi.
I have just spoken to Honorable Kyagulanyi on one of the phones, because what has happened, they have blocked my line, blocked his line, his wife's line, and a couple of other leaders. So we can't quite communicate, but we've gotten other SIM cards that we are using to try and communicate. So there's one that I've used to communicate with him on another that he has. He is very concerned about what's happening. One, as you can see, none of us is allowed to access him. Anybody that tries to access his gate is gotten and beaten up. You journalists have tried to access, and you were chased away with threats of being beaten. We saw what has happened to Honorable Zake. So he got there and he was beaten. I was trying to access, and it is you journalists that said, no, please remain around because you'll be brutalized. There's people that were trying to take groceries to him and the wife, and those who are sent away as well. So clearly, they're cutting him off from everybody. So he's alone in the house with his wife. They've taken away the guards. Soldiers have actually jumped the fence and they're in the compound, loitering all over the place. He's very concerned about his security and his wife's security. They're in there, very isolated. They don't know what's going to happen next, whether these guys will break into the house and wreak havoc, as they have been doing. They've also, interestingly, they've clearly cut off all forms of communication. They've cut off even DSTV connection, which he renewed yesterday.
PG decides 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of this live broadcast of the 2021 general elections here at NTV. I'll now hand you over to Rita Kanya, that is on standby with a panel of guests to dissect some of the issues that we have seen come out in this general election. Over to you, Rita Kanya.
Now, as we have the conversation, and all eyes are still on Uganda when it comes to the decision that she made on the 14th of January 2021. Now, taking a look, President Museveni has been re-elected for another term in office after scoring 58.64% in the just concluded election. His rival, Robert Kyagulanyi, polled 34%. Second coming well was FDC's Patrick Oboy Amuriat coming in third with a paltry 3%. Now, the election, to some observers, fell short of the tenets of a free, fair and credible poll and was conducted at the time that the internet was shut down. However, government says this was necessary to nip a potential threat of violence in the bud. Museveni made gains in northern Uganda and West Nile, taking lock, stock and barrel of regions that previously rejected him. Kyagulanyi won in Buganda and made inroads in the NRM strongholds such as Luwero, Chiboga, Nakasongola, Iganga, Jinja and Kamuli. There was a high attrition rate in regard to the MP seats as the Vice President, Edward Sekandi, and some prominent ministers lost in the polls. Kyagulanyi's party swept seats in the Buganda as the NRM grabbed seats in the opposition strongholds in Acholi, Lango and West Nile. As he seeks to rule for nearly 4 decades, to some analysts, the just concluded election is a watershed moment for the country, whose history is peppered with conflict. Perhaps this is the time to commence the discussion on the transition in earnest. To discuss, I am joined by a panel of experts who will be including the Secretary General Justin Kasule Lumumba. We'll be expecting her to join us, but we are joined by the Kampala Central MP-elect, Mohamed Nsereko, and Mr. Isaac Otim Etot, a lawyer within the country. Good evening and welcome. Good evening. To you, Honorable, should also be saying congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, we just start off a conversation with what kind of election we had. One that concluded just with polls largely having few incidents of violence and glitches, but the voter turnout recorded was one of the lowest at 50%. Now, starting off with you, MP-elect Honorable Mohamed, coming to an office through an election quite unprecedented, what is your experience? The hours drawing to voting and the hours after, what was it like for you?
Well, a campaign is a long cycle. It's not merely the voting day, but the build up towards, an election is a cycle, not only the voting day. The build up from the nominations, canvassing and interaction with the media, explanation of your program, you're doing self-marketing or you're marketing a party. So the more the platform you're given to explain your policy or your product, then the better for you. You are talking about the election day. That's the climax. Well, what haven't we seen? Election after election has different dynamics. Just like a football match, every match differs with every opponent and your preparations. Now, the only problem we are seeing today is that in Africa and in Uganda, what we witnessed recently during the elections, that there is no single line drawn between the referees and the participants.
Who would you expect to draw that line?
It is terrible. It is terrible. When you sit this side and you hear some umpires getting commands from even those you're playing with in the same playing field, then it's very unfortunate. And I can tell you, the country is hugely divided. Some people may not want to believe it, and that's the reality. And this is the division. The first division is those that participated in the election, then those that protested participation in this election. Over 8 million voters said we shall not participate in this election. Now, whosoever is elected, whether member of parliament, local council, or president of the republic, just know that you do not have the mandate of half of the registered voters. Therefore, the president must know that some people were not actually even interested in the entire process.
And what
some
does that
were
reveal?
either not comfortable with either of the candidates that were there, or they no longer have confidence in elections as a way to pick up transition or change of power. And the more people realize that elections are becoming meaningless to them, the more you can buy all kinds of weapons. You can do all kinds of development, but they have not given you their mandate.
But then
They have not participated. I know elections, participation in elections should not be like a right, it should be a command that you're now commanded, that you should go and participate in making choice for the leader that you want. But the most unfortunate bit, and the biggest cause of my worry, that when we talked about SIM card registration, we had many people coming up. How many SIM cards were registered? Over 15 million people. People queued up to register SIM cards. Days and days, people were enthusiastic going to pick their national IDs because that was an issue that touched them. We asked for extensions, we participated as politicians, me personally, helping people get IDs. You would stand there and see that. But goodness me, when it came to elections, some people are not bothered. But this is the most pertinent thing where your decision matters, Rita.
And that is where,
decision that
Honorable,
will make as to whether you can practice journalism in Uganda in a free and fair environment by legislation.
But you, on a daily basis in the 60 days running up to this particular 14th of January 2021, you have participated in making sure and telling people, please go ahead, vote, perhaps asking them to vote you in particular, but that conversation has happened. What was the interaction like? Because if you mention the fact that we have this group of people who don't in any way have confidence in a vote or are not bothered in going to vote, but are more interested in making sure they have that SIM card, as you have put it.
Rita, that's what I tell you. One person was telling me that it's very unfortunate that in poor societies, people decide to be poor by choice. Because the choices we make in life determine a lot. You have the choice not to go to school. You have the choice not to work if you don't want. You have the choice not to perform certain duties, even not to pray. But the choices that we make as individuals determine our future. Unfortunately, I'm seeing people playing with their choices. I've been through an election cycle, and no one would ask you the brilliant question of, you're a legislator, please can you tell us about your tax policy? And I would feel so disappointed by telling them, they were only asking, agenda. And agenda. You know, people were even scared that we are going to vote, but our vote might not count. Honorable, are you sure that you will not be reached out? So people are telling you, we are going to vote for you, but we don't know whether you will be reached out. Please get people to gather. They may buy your declaration form. They may, intimidate you. Wherever you live, your people are being arrested. Honorable, help us get this one from, you go to court, pick up this one. People's cars were shot at, like my PA's car was shot at Chitant. Two tires flat. He was beaten and tortured, and trumped up charges were put on him that he was attempting to kidnap. I mean, someone who was delivering food now has charges of kidnap. Now, when you read the stories of the 1980s, goodness me, the only difference is that you have TVs. There was one television. Now we can tell the stories as they were. But we cannot even freely tell them. There is no internet. There is no Facebook, there is no social media, and you cannot continuously clamp down on that. You can stop a match briefly, but you can stop this generation I'm seeing. If this level of unemployment goes on, the level of anger and the way they are voting emotionally, because people are voting based on emotions, not based on the message. They are not looking out for quality. They are not looking out for anything. Despite, a few spots where they say, like, probably someone would say, I found someone who told me, Honorable, Nakulose. He was so happy. Which symbol? Oh my God. And then he said, you want on an umbrella? I said, I was not. I voted wrongly. But we didn't get time to publicize our symbols. We were independent. Now, it was either the bus or the umbrella. Now, many people died in the crossfire there. That's why people were calling it the web. So you would find people would say, Honorable, I voted for you. So people don't even bother to look at the picture of someone on the ballot paper. They only say, without change meant the umbrella. You are not on the umbrella. I said, no, I was on the clock. He said, how did I miss voting for you? So where was the message? I want to tell the people that are viewing us outside there that voting emotionally also has a problem. But this has been as a result of the message that has been going out. The biggest people that got airtime were the leading opposition, those that had the umbrella, and congratulations to them, and also the NRM. So the choice was between the bus and the umbrella. People would just be so critical to say, but wait a second. Let me take time and read all through this. There is in Serekoia on the clock, and they tick. Otherwise, it was not very easy as anticipated. So that's why people would tell you, I don't even know who I voted for, but I voted. Yeah. But remember, you're taking that hard decision of choosing the person who is going to make laws for you as to whether you'll pay high taxes or low taxes, as to whether you receive certain services or not. Now, in that spark of a moment, the anger overrides you and you lose the best at times. Then the violence, the riots that were there, the people that died, the people kept their anger. And they said, you know what? Either we will not go to participate in this election by protesting, or we shall just vote in protest. So the president can talk about the roads, he can talk about the schools, he can talk about the hospitals, he can talk about the markets that have been opened, but the message is not sinking in. Why? The young people, I'm not saying all of them, who have not gotten this explanation, either from schools or other areas, because what are the TVs showing? Are the televisions showing the roads and the bridges, or they are showing the pictures of people being beaten, a presidential candidate having his car shot at, the agents being arrested, those in the campaign trail? Therefore, what the media feeds to the people is what will emotionally drive. Amongst the causes of World War I and World War II was as a result of the media. The causes of you remember the revolutions in Italy, 1848. They had that newspaper that was called Corriere della Sera. The media, since time immemorial, what the media gives you is what millions of people are watching.
And actually, Honorable, when you mentioned the media, it has been a part of the campaigns. It also got its own attention in its own way, hashtags on different social media platforms. But just to pause you there for a bit and to bring in Isaac into this conversation, you mentioned earlier the law, trumped up charges, you say. And in different places, different people were arrested for different reasons. But to bring you from the angle of the law, Isaac, the infringement of rights, most especially human rights, we had different observers. We had CSOs coming out as on the heel of the election day mentioning this. And also now just the internet shut down with no explanation until this evening, actually, when Ofono Pondo came out to say, this was something to do with a security assessment that we had made, and we thought it's safe that, for now, let's shut down the internet. So such things, your comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. I would say generally, by cutting off the internet and a lot of as we have seen in these elections, that we've seen a lot of young people come up and vote. And most of this young generation are accustomed to use of social media. And this category of young people were also not used to reading newspapers as ordinarily we would do. So their main mode of communication being the internet, being cut off, that really affected them. So that kind of also goes into, in one way, barring them from accessing a lot of information, because the best way for this category that has really shown a very big presence in this voting is to actually ensure that the internet was very active. But where the internet is not available, then you realize that many of that category is left out. Well, one would say that there's a very big population that does not or is unable to access the internet. But I've been moving around to villages or even trading centers in poor areas, and you find somebody has very simple Samsung, and they're able to access the internet. And you find groups of young people trying to access whatever. So when you take away the internet, that means you've cut out that category. So in a way, an election without such provisions for them leaves them out.
But also, just speaking for the days leading up to the voting,
Yes.
Honorable Nsereko had mentioned the fact that it's an election cycle.
Yes.
There's everything that builds up to this particular day.
Yes.
I believe you have been watching these different things. You have perhaps gotten reports, or you have been at the forefront of it. Where did it leave a voter? Was there a choice of, this is my time to now go and cast my vote, or this is my time to stay home and be safe?
Like Honorable mentioned earlier, that election is not only about voting on that day. Election is about a whole cycle, and this starts from nomination to the time when one is votes. But even before that, there is where the voters have to be enlightened on the issues at hand. That means the various actors, like the candidates, the government, the civil society, are able to reach these people. Now, with violence, the kind of violence that we saw on television, it freaks out very many people and kind of curtails them from coming out and speaking out in a certain particular manner. So that, in a way, also affects freedom of expression. Because, I mean, if you ask somebody their view, they will have to give you a kind of a guided or coded view that is acceptable. But that might not be exactly what he thinks. So when you look at actually the elections in Uganda here, you realize that prior to the voting day, many people were saying that Bobby Wine might not be able to get the numbers that we're seeing. And some people were trying to use also the NRM primaries. But come the election day, we see another picture. So that means some of those curtailments of rights went into affect these categories of people.
All right. Well, we're going to be taking a short break, and we'll be coming right back.
Why so nervous?
I just don't want anyone to see us.
That's why we've come to a different town. We'll be fine.
Welcome. So you have come for some family planning advice?
Mission accomplished. This way, I can finish university without getting pregnant.
And I've got time to get my business off the